So the shoe that changed the marathon racing scene gets its 4th iteration. And while there aren't a ton of huge changes, there are some good updates. I've done my first run on them, I'm ready to give you my first impressions. So let's start with the specs. This shoe has 40mm in the heel, 32 in the forefoot, including the sock liner, and that brings it to an 8mm heel-to-toe drop. The weight is lightweight at 6.9 ounces, and this shoe falls under the carbon-plated racer category. Alright, now let's talk about the fit of this shoe. So I got what I typically get in most shoes, my US men's size 12, and I thought that the right foot felt pretty okay. It has that snugger kind of racing flat feel, so that's what I was expecting, and that's what it felt like. But on my left foot, it was a little bit tight. So my left foot does have a heel spur, but that typically doesn't affect any sizing on any of my shoes. I've never really had a problem with it. But for some reason on the Next Percent 2, I found that the left foot was really tight. My toes felt a little cramped and were pushed up towards the end, and that resulted in blisters after my first run. So I am going to try a size 12.5 in these and see if that fixes that issue. Alright, so let's talk about what's new in the shoe overview section. So the upper is where we're going to see all of these changes. The first Vaporfly had the Vaporweave upper that was fairly rigid, but the Vaporfly Next Percent 2 uses a very breathable, airy mesh that reminds me of Atom Knit, but softer. It adds a toe cap for some added structural integrity, and it borrows the nubby laces from the Alphafly. The midsole is the exact same as the first Vaporfly Next Percent with the same carbon plate, sandwiched inside a good amount of ZoomX foam. The outsole is the exact same as well, with coverage in the forefoot and a few strips in the heel. However, one thing that I did notice is that it looks like on the first Vaporfly Next Percent, the outsole comes further over the upper, while on the Next Percent 2, it doesn't come up as high on the upper, maybe thanks to the toe cap. Besides that though, they're the exact same. Alright, now let's talk about my first impressions with the ride of the shoe. So yesterday I took it out and did a 2x2 mile, 1x1 mile at 10K race pace for a total of 8 miles. And this is in preparation for a 10K I have coming up next week. So the ride is the exact same as the first version of the Vaporfly Next Percent. It has that nice cushion and pop in the forefoot, and then you still have that skinny midfoot and heel, which can be a little bit unstable at slower paces. So it was a bit of a warmer day, and the airy upper felt very nice and breathable. My feet didn't overheat. But like I mentioned earlier, my left foot started getting blisters and just feeling really cramped the last half of my run or so. So I am going to try out that size 12.5, and then I'll give you my updates on my full review. Alright, now I'm going to do a couple of real quick comparisons with the Vaporfly Next Percent 2. And the first one I'm going to compare it to is the Saucony Endorphin Pro. So between the upper on these two shoes, they're both nice, lightweight, and minimal, but I think I prefer the upper on the Endorphin Pro just because it fits a little more traditional, not quite as snug, and I think just more soft and more comfortable overall. So as far as the midsole and the ride, I found that the Endorphin Pro was a little bit firmer and a little less cushioned feeling than the Vaporfly Next Percent 2, but they are both very snappy and very fast race day options. I did like how from the midfoot through the heel, the Endorphin Pro was more stable than the Vaporfly Next Percent though. And they both have very minimal, nothing crazy going on, racing-oriented outsoles. So overall, I'd say that the Endorphin Pro is a little more traditional and a little more stable, but the Vaporfly Next Percent is a little more bouncy in that forefoot. And the next shoe I'm going to compare it to is the Hoka Rocket X. So again, they both have very minimal race-oriented uppers, but I'd say that the Rocket X is definitely more traditional and closer to the Endorphin Pro. So the Vaporfly Next Percent has more cushion underfoot than the Rocket X, and I found that the rocker wasn't as aggressive in the Rocket X, and that you didn't really notice the carbon fiber plate as much compared to that more aggressive rocker and that more pronounced pop off the carbon plate that you find in the Vaporfly Next Percent 2. So overall, I'd say that the Rocket X is a less aggressive, less cushioned marathon racer, but it is more traditional feeling compared to the Vaporfly. So I will be comparing the Vaporfly Next Percent 2 to the Alphafly, but I'll be doing this in a separate toe-to-toe shoe showdown video because there are a lot of thoughts that I have and I want to go more in depth on them. So in conclusion, I think that if you liked the original Vaporfly but wished it had a little more flexible, a little more breathable upper, then you'll be really happy with the Vaporfly Next Percent 2. But if you weren't a fan of the midsole or the ride of the first Vaporfly Next Percent, then I think you'll still be disappointed with this shoe as that has not changed. So I'm going to buy a size 12.5, try those out, put more miles on the shoe, and give you my full review. And I also have a special Vaporfly project coming up, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss either of those videos. Let me know what you think about the Vaporfly Next Percent 2 in the comments down below, and as always, keep on running.